Welcome back to the Wolves Only podcast, powered by JWX. So this is a special. This is really special, John. You know why it's special?
Why is it special?
It's special because, well, it's impromptu. It's a Wednesday night, and bro, we've known each other forever.
It's true. Just about as long as you could know somebody.
I mean, really know somebody, right? Like you have like play dates when you're like 6, you know, and whatever, but you don't know that motherfucker, you know?
Exactly.
But we, you know, we've known each other since we were kids. And like when shit really mattered, you know, high school and so on and so forth. And, you know, we've seen each other go through just about every phase that a human being can go through, and most human beings don't even go through. So, little history about John and I. John and I met at church, and he was a musician. He was a guitarist, and I had a band. And he was young. You know, how old are you?
34.
You had to think about that, huh?
Yeah.
So you're about 4 years younger than me. So I was. Well, like I was like 16 or 17. You were like 13 or 12. Like you were like just a freshman in high school.
Yeah, I was 13. I think at the time you were 16 going on 17.
Nice. And we met at church, and I was like, dude, I need a guitarist. And I was like, you ever heard of hardcore? And I think you didn't really know what the hell I was talking about.
Not in the way that you meant it. No.
Well, yeah, you're like hardcore. Yeah. No, I'm kidding.
I think like the Used was about the hardest stuff that I had listened to prior to moving to Grand Rapids.
And it's crazy because you grew up in Detroit, right?
Yeah. Well, I lived in Detroit, but everything we did was like in Sterling Heights, which is very, gosh, I don't even know how you would describe Sterling Heights other than it sucks, but very flat
it does
and
suck.
Boring. Yeah.
Yeah, it is boring. You know, I mean, that's Oakland County, right?
You know, to tell you the truth, I'm not even sure. I feel like because I didn't learn to drive in Detroit, I don't have a good grasp of where anything actually is. I can pretty much get to Sterling Heights from here, and I can get to my old house from Sterling Heights, and past that, I have to use GPS. I don't know where anything is.
Fair enough. I think nowadays we just use GPS for everything. But anyways, yeah. Pretty so I introduced you to hardcore, and you we had a band together, Lola.
Yeah.
And honestly, well, yeah, we spelt it wrong. And honestly, I think that looking back at it, like there was a season where I looked back at Lola and I was like, man, that was really bad. But then I look at it now, I'm like, we were ahead of our time.
Yeah, definitely. It's cool because, I mean, when you listen to other bands from that era, and even bands now that sound like bands from that era, it's all like a very distinct sound. But I feel like at least that EP that we did, every song sounds completely different from the other one, and it all has like a unique thing about it that was different even from other stuff in the genre at the time.
I think because we had like, you know, we had a killer drummer that recorded with us on that, right? Matt. And he was like way better musician than we were. And you know, but he wasn't a hardcore drummer. He was like a church drummer. He was very like technique oriented and all of that. And it really, but he understood it and he could play anything. He was a professional drummer, which I don't know what he's doing now. I haven't talked to him, in years. but he added like a different flavor because he knew how to play like, like Spanish music and stuff like that. So that really added a certain essence to Lola. And obviously, like if you go back and you put it next to any Midwest metalcore band, we were just the same. I mean, you could have lined up some of our songs to Haste the Day songs and things like that, and you could tell what we were listening to at the time. But it was just, it was different. And, I think if we would have been able to hold it together, we probably would have done something special with it. But, either way, it was a good learning experience, and it was fun, and we, I don't know, I think I fucked the band up, as I did everything else in my life during that time. But it is what it is. But actually, you went on though to do some really cool projects, and I think I've liked pretty much every project that you've done ever since. And you definitely, dude, you're so talented as a musician. But I mean, so far, what is your favorite project that you've done?
Ooh, I feel like the project I was the most emotionally invested in was Glory Days, just because of the point in life that I was at when I started that band. And it's the most creative that I have ever felt musically, where like it was just sort of like 24/7 flow state. Like I could just hear the songs in my head and just I couldn't get them out fast enough, and demoing stuff all the time. And that was almost the hard part about being in the band is, when you're just starting out and you don't really have any traction, you're not making any money. We were all at that point where everybody pretty much had jobs and stuff, and it was harder for the other guys to take it as seriously. Whereas I wanted to just do it 24/7.
That is always a problem, isn't it?
Yeah. I feel like that was a theme of basically every band I was in. There was always like an unequal level of commitment, and I think it only works when everybody's in 100%.
I think that's how it goes in anything, right? It's like you got to burn the boats to make it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's one thing. It's probably on my bucket list of things to do before I die is go back and like actually record the songs from that band properly in a studio and have that as sort of a time capsule. But yeah, that was a good time.
I saw Glory Days one time. I made a special trip, I think, to go see you guys. And it was like there was a proud moment for me because, like, I mean, I think that maybe I'm mistaken, but I think I had a little bit of influence, in your life. And yeah. when it was like seeing you, like, that was like the most confident I've seen you in a band, the most like professional that I've seen you. And just the style, because it was, if I'm not mistaken, that was like kind of like Gaslight Anthem style. Kind of like what, yeah. Like kind of punk rock, rockabilly, like, I don't know what else how else to describe it, but it was really, it was really great. It fit your voice, which you and I both have like a unique voice where it's either if it doesn't fit the band, like we can't sing. But that's, I mean, that's how it goes, right? Like, some of us aren't gifted. I think you have a great voice, don't get me wrong, but some of us, like, it's like the genre, it has to be very specific to the genre. So that was like the whole theme of that band worked really well for you. And I just remember like watching you and being like, and I was probably fucked up, but I just remember like, I
probably was too.
Yeah. And it was just really cool, and then you went on to, doing some country stuff as well, huh?
Yeah, I did some solo stuff, and my wife and I moved to Nashville back in 2017, and we lived there for 5 years. And I don't want to say that we moved for music, because we were sort of at a point in life where there wasn't much left to do in Grand Rapids, and it was like, well, if we don't go now, we'll probably have kids and get more settled and we'll never leave. So we should just do it while there's nothing to lose. And we both got good jobs in the hair industry, which was both of our careers. So it made it easy to just up and go. So when I was there, it made sense to explore that and just songwriting in general. And it was a humbling experience because you learn pretty quick how much you suck when you're around people who like actually like do this shit for a living, and like professional songwriters and full-time artists, and the talent there is just insane. And I think the other fact is that a lot of people start when they're like 17, 18 and they have nothing to lose and they move to Nashville. And I was 25, 6, 7, something like that at the time. And I already had a career, and I had certain creature comforts that I didn't want to give up to live in my van and play music all the time. So I didn't really have that same level of commitment to that as some of the young people coming up in the industry had. But I feel like I still, got to stretch my legs creatively and wrote a ton of stuff, learned a lot about songwriting in general. And really the coolest part was the stuff I got to do in the music industry, actually through doing hair, because Nashville is just so plugged into music that literally any industry that you're in probably is involved with music in some capacity. So I got to do a lot of cool things because of that. So that was fun. It was a good experience, but
Yeah, definitely. You definitely have like a way, and you're like me, we're kind of chameleons, or we're able to like fit the mold of our situation very well. And some people would call that conforming, and other people would call that adapting and evolving. And in my opinion, to be able to have multiple styles, multiple I don't want to say multiple personalities, but at the same time, it's like you're able to adjust yourself to certain situations, and that really is a powerful asset, if in my opinion. It's funny because I can like show up. I don't really like country, but I can throw on a pair of cowboy boots, rock it, you know what I mean, and do my thing. But but the cool thing is when it comes to networking and it comes to being able to get in where you fit in, it's valuable. And I think a lot of people they'll turn their nose up to it. They'll be like, I'm one way and that's it. And it's like, okay, well, expect to be around one type of person. I think, being a musician, it gives us an opportunity to, but a lot of musicians also are very one-dimensional as well. So, and you see great musicians like Chuck Ragan, who, goes from like hot water music, and then he starts doing his own like country style thing, even what's his name from Gaslight Anthem, same thing. It's like these guys explore other opportunities and can take on different personalities and genres. And it allows them to become way more, noted. Also, I think the idea of being omnipresent, right? Like in music, it's one thing, but it's like musicians who can act and musicians who can run businesses and things like that. You're able to, again, just build a bigger network and a much bigger horizon and future for yourself. So, it's incredible that's a skill set that you picked up, especially too, because like both of us come from like pretty one-dimensional parents, and upbringings, and to have two guys like you and me who kind of completely broke that mold. You're an only child, so it is probably more likely for you to than somebody with like a brother and sister and things like that. Trent, my little brother, is very, very talented, but he plays really on the safe side. He's got a beautiful life for himself, but he married his high school sweetheart. He's been with her for like 18 years.
Dude, I just figured that out the other day, and I don't know who I was talking to or whatever. And it just like floored me that he was like, what, 16 when they started dating. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how is he even old enough to, because when I was around, he seems so young, in his first band and everything. And I'm like, holy shit, he's already married to somebody that he's been with for this long. That's just insane.
It's insane. He is like the guy who's like, this is what I like, this is what I'm gonna do. And he literally does the same thing every single day. And it's amazing. He's incredibly disciplined. Now that he's quit drinking too, he's getting ripped. Like he's jacked. He hasn't drank for over a year. He didn't have like a problem like I did, but he, you know what I mean? He recognized that he was very dependent on alcohol and he was drinking a lot very often. And it stopped suiting his life. So he just gave it up, and like you and me, like when we're in, right. But he is like, you talk about a guy though. Yeah. He plays it safe, but he just knows what he's like. He's very simple. And I appreciate that with him. He doesn't let a lot of people in. He tests people. But he's the exact opposite of me. Right.
Yeah.
Same woman since he was 16 years old. Like I've been, I'm not the guy to, hey, listen, I'm the guy to go to,
That's its own podcast right there.
That's its own podcast right there. And I'm so lucky too. If it's so funny, in my situation, and that's another podcast, but to where like my wife is someone that found I found me when I was at my most vulnerable state, right? Where always before, like I ruled the roost and it was whatever. And to be accepted and loved under like those conditions it's a totally different feeling, right? The other thing too with that is like, she didn't need me and I didn't really need her. And that was probably the best feeling was that. But again, that's another conversation, but it's really interesting when you like a lot of couples grow codependent or they were they're coming out of a situation and they latch and, and it turns into like, oh, but we're in love. Well, it's like, okay, yeah, like my wife and I are in love, but we're both completely healthy apart and we're with each other because we want to be with each other and really nothing more. Right.
Yeah.
And there's some value in that. And it's the first time that I've ever had that before. Because any other time I'd just been codependent and I just didn't want to be alone and whatever, but it was always unhealthy. It was always toxic. But Trenton, he's totally different. He's totally, just his simple self. And I love him for that. It's incredible. But enough about Trenton. This podcast is about you.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I feel like it's sort of a joke about me that I've had so many different personalities, literally, like you said. And I've, even at times felt insecure about that. Like, am I really authentic in anything if there's so many different versions of myself I can see living out? But I sort of reframe it in that, not everybody, but I guess on some level, everybody is a multi-dimensional person. And why would I not explore something in myself that I find interest in? And then, get to the end of my life and be like, well, I always wanted to do that, but I never gave it a shot. And I've done some like, weird things that, people wouldn't necessarily expect. Like I got really into horsemanship when I was in Nashville and I spent like 2 years like learning how to ride a horse and training horses. And like, I was obsessed. I wanted to like buy land and I did buy land actually, but I wanted to like have horses and train them and all that shit. And it was such a cool experience though. And obviously I didn't go that route for a number of reasons, but I mean, I had experiences because of that like I will have for the rest of my life that I never would have had I not tried it out. And everybody, when I was doing it, was like, oh yeah, John's the weird horse shit that he's doing. And
I never thought that silly. Once. I actually admired that about you. Here's the thing, John. we can share this that most people can't. We have balls. Like if you wake up and you're like, today I'm going to be a cowboy, go be a fucking cowboy. You know, if you wake up tomorrow and you're like, I'm going to be a fucking pirate, like go be a fucking pirate. Like who gives a fuck? And it's funny. I read this today and I thought it was really interesting, and it's more on the level of business and success, but it's true in any dimension. It says that billionaires spend millions to make billions, millionaires spend thousands to make millionaires, and broke people won't give up anything but expect to be millionaires. Like that's how it works with everything. And it's because a lot of people, like they're afraid. They're afraid of investing. They're afraid of jumping into something. They're afraid of the opinion of other people, and they never explore what could potentially happen, or even just a simple experience and a new skill to learn or anything like that. And it's sad because, you know, I think if you look at it today, like a large percentage, like over 80% of the population is unhappy with their life. Okay. Divorce rate is well over 50%. Okay. Divorce rate amongst people our age is even higher. The way that people planned it out isn't working. It doesn't work. And when you have guys that can be like, look, I'm into this. Like, dude, I'm into weird shit too. I just started collecting fucking weird dolls.
I saw that.
Well, they're not dolls, but they're like bears, like plastic bears from Japan.
Yeah.
And they're cool. They're collabed with artists. Like I just got one that was an Andy Warhol. I got one that was a Shepherd Fairy, and I'm into Shepherd Fairy. I've collected some of that, but I like collecting weird shit, you know, and I like having shit that nobody else has. And I get into it and I start to learn about it, and then I have a guy who like advises me on what to get and stuff like that. And I like everything I do is like I want to do something. I want to get into something that catches my eye, that makes me feel special, right? I'm not going to lie. Like I like stuff that makes me feel special. If I'm somebody that has the only something of whatever, that I like that feeling, right?
Yeah.
If I'm the guy that like went against the grain, right? Like for myself, like, you know, my life was pretty set up and I went completely in a different direction. That makes me feel great, but it brings me to a level of like contentment in life, to where it's like, I get to do stuff that no one else gets to do because I have balls, and you have balls, and you've gotten to do stuff that no one else gets to do. Who gives a fuck what Johnny Taxman, who had, you know, is miserable at home and has the time to say, oh, John's on his weird horse thing. Like get fucked. Who cares?
Yeah. And you know, it's so easy, especially in Nashville, because, you know, people come for the country music vibes and the whole, you know, Yellowstone shit that's blown up and everything. And I never wanted to be the kind of person that was like all hat and no cowboy when it comes to anything. So it's like, if I'm gonna like explore an identity, like I want to do the thing, not just like dress up as the thing. So if I'm into this, I want to know everything about it. I want to know what it's like. And like, I remember one day, I had like just left the ranch and I was like covered in dirt and horse poop, and I had a cowboy hat on and dirty boots, and I was at the gas station. Like it was like 100 degrees. It was hot, and I was like looking for a drink. And this guy comes up to me. He's like, man, you almost look like a real cowboy or something. Like, do you even like ride horses? And I just like, I don't even think I said anything. I think I just laughed and walked away, because I'm like, that's such a stupid Nashville thing to like call somebody out. But at the same time, it's true. Like most people don't. So I just didn't want to be that. And at least now I have cool stories to talk about that other people don't.
No, embrace it fully. Fuck it. I love it. It's really cool. So coming back, so really too, now like this next evolution in your life was like, right, like cleaning up your act, you know, getting in great shape. You look amazing. You know, you and I both, we battled our weight our entire life, you know.
Yeah.
getting in this incredible shape that you're in. You have a beautiful family. You just had a new baby girl. You have 2 girls.
Yeah. I'm severely
God was ready to really show you what,
Yeah. Oh,
give you
yeah.
what you deserve. But that's great. And it's like, okay, so you've gotten to experience all this stuff. And now it's like, okay, I'm going to settle down like my life. You went back home, went back to Grand Rapids, which is what it is. Okay. There was reasons for that. And we don't need to
Mhm.
go into that. But what's great is that like you have you've proven that you can take something and become talented in it. You just have natural talent, and that's something that a lot of people do not have. They're just naturals. They're gifted. They're able to grab a hold of things and figure it out quick, and be able to explore things like you have. But here's something that you have that is not easy to obtain. And I actually just did something a minute ago, reacted to a real that a very famous billionaire talked about, but that you have likability. And likability, some people say it's easy. I disagree. I think that there's some people out there, and especially if you grew up in the kind of communities that we did, where like likability is limited to the circle of people that agree with you. And you have likability that anybody can like.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I try. I would attribute some of that, honestly, to my parents, surprisingly enough, because, my mom, for the majority of my life growing up, was in fundraising. And so literally her job was to be likable to people so that they would give her money for, the cause that she was advocating for. And she was very good at that. I remember going to countless fundraising events, like big ones that she would host growing up at different places. And I just watched how she carried herself around other people, and, the way she would talk, her mannerisms, things like that. And even my dad has been in education for a really long time and is a musician as well, and is a very good speaker. So things like that were fairly common growing up. And I feel like they passed a lot of that on to me. Obviously personality traits you can't necessarily fake. But yeah, I definitely had some help from them. And, even going back to like not being all hat and no cowboy, like I like to attempt to be as authentic as possible, because I feel like it's just painfully obvious when people aren't. And, I don't see any value or any point to being anything other than who you really are and who you really want to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of people wear masks, and they and they expect to be liked. They expect to be respected, and you're like, well, who do I respect? What is the person that I respect? Because that person isn't really you, and eventually it will rear its fucking ugly head, and you'll be exposed. So really, authenticity is your only option, and look, even if you can make a career out of being a fucking phony, um, you got to live with yourself.
Right. Yeah. And it has to get exhausting after a while, because you constantly have to try and pretend. And there's a difference between exercising the skill of communication, and even like with things like creating content and reels, like you want to deliver in a certain way. So you're using skills that you learn and develop over time. But like, I'm not getting on the internet as a different person. Literally, it's just me, and I'm just trying to articulate things clearly.
Yeah, you're right. Um, it's funny because I took a lot of shit when I started doing what I do. And I had a lot of people that were like, you're a little over the top and you're whatever. But what became my superpower in this is I was able to just block them. Like if I got anyone that questioned me, because I moved 2,300 miles away. I started my new life out here. I had new friends, people that I actually liked, people that actually like wanted to be around me. One big thing for me is that I'm not my dad's son here. I'm just Justin, right? And that was something that was really special to me, was that like I could just be Justin here. And that kind of gave me a new sense of freedom. But what I'll tell you what it did is it gave me the ability to cut people out. I don't know why I said it like that, but I wanted it to be dramatic. It gave me a really great skill set of like, even if you question what I'm doing, I have no problem just blocking you out of my life. And so any of the noise, any of the chatter, like me and Scotty would talk about it because Scotty's back home. We would talk. I mean, we obviously talked every day, all day. We were building a business together. So he would sometimes like, I would be like, fill me in because I want to know so I can prove them wrong. But in terms of like direct communication, fucking out. I have no interest. And I did. Some very, very close people, some people that you may not know, but some really close people, roommates in college, co-workers, old party friends, things like that, that would question what I was doing. And maybe they would say something slighted or whatever. I literally blocked them on all forms of communication and never looked back, never unblocked, never even went to like check out what they were up to or anything like that. Just completely blocked them out. And now moving forward, a year later or 2 years later, now 2 years later after blocking them out, right? Because that's about a year in. I'm like, I don't even give a fuck. Like, I don't even care.
Yeah.
Like, what, like, I mean, really? Like, okay, but like, I'm going to care about your opinion. I'll cry myself fucking asleep in my fucking beautiful home or my, whatever. Like, I'm not like, what the fuck do I have to care? Because I have thousands and thousands of people that have my back, that love what I do, that I'm able to help, that I'm able to change. What do I care about some guy I used to fucking go back and forth on Miller Lights and cocaine in the bathroom with? Like, because guess what they're doing? Miller Lights and cocaine in the bathroom still and feeling miserable. Exactly. They're fat. They're nobodies and they're never going to be anybody. So what do I give a fuck? Right. And I chose to just surround myself with people who wanted to be like abundance mindset people that want bigger things, that cheer people on when they're winning, that that get excited about like victory and fucking achievement and all that great stuff. Like, you can tell just by how somebody reacts to your achievements whether you need to keep them close to you or not.
Yep. Yeah, and you hear it all the time in this space, especially, but like you'll never hear anyone doing better than you talking shit. And I mean, it's so true because, to be successful, I feel like you need a certain level of maturity. And I think it just takes maturity to be able to just look at something somebody else is doing and take your personal opinion out of the equation and just, are they doing something positive or are they doing something negative? Maybe it's not what I have an interest in or something I would do, but they're clearly trying to do something net positive. So I'm going to be supportive of that. And even with this experience, I've sort of just taken away all expectations of how other people will react to it, like people in my life. It really... Once I commit to something, I'm in. So it doesn't make a difference what anybody else wants to think about it. And I've sort of sat back and waited to see you know, if anybody had anything to say. And, you know, there's certain people who I sort of had an idea of what their opinion might be, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. And honestly, what's funny though, is for the most part, I've been pleasantly surprised. Some of the people that I thought were going to have more negative things to say have actually been fairly positive and have reached out specifically to, you know, say, hey, I see you out there and I love what you're doing. And, you know, even clients that I've gotten through this who are like, you know, people I never would have expected to even be watching, let alone getting something out of it to the point where they want to engage on that level. So, yeah, I mean, the only
You're
way
always
to
going
do
to be
anything is
surprised
to,
by that.
yeah.
The funny
Exactly.
thing too is that like I want to just make this like state this real quick, and then I want to back up to something that you said. But the funny thing too is like so many men especially suffer in silence, right? And they'll be negative, right? And they will be afraid of change or watching you change or things like that because it makes them uncomfortable, but they're truly not fed up enough with their own shit to the point where they're ready to make change. Here's the deal though, they're still watching. And it's funny how repetition works and how just being consistent works, because eventually those people will be fed up with their own shit. And they were watching all along, and then you stay consistent, and out of nowhere they come to you and they're like, I'm ready. And I see it happen all the fucking time where people will follow and watch. And I know they're watching because I pay attention to everything, and they're ready. And I know that they probably had a negative mindset at first just based on indifference, lack of reaction, whatever. But I see them watching, and it's like you wonder, you're like, I wonder where their head's at. Not that I care if they care or not, but like you're like, these people are like obviously watching, and it's like I wonder where their heads at. And then out of nowhere, they'll be like, "Hey, I love what you're doing. You know, I've been thinking about, you know, making a change in my life." And you're like, "That's why I do this." The thing I wanted to back up to what you said is you know, it is true that nobody that's doing anything better than you will ever turn their nose up at you or talk shit, right? They just won't. It doesn't exist. But what I would kind of elaborate on and kind of level that up real quick is like a millionaire will never turn their nose up at you for trying to start a business, right? Just like an NBA player would never look down on you for trying to play basketball, or a bodybuilder would look down on you for trying to go into the gym. The only people that would look down or have a negative opinion on that is people who are doing fucking nothing with their life. And that kind of goes, and it's true. It's 100% true. There are no other like isolated situations. The only shit talkers, the only people that have any negativity about something that someone's trying to do, they live in a low frequency. They have no abundant mindset. They're fucking losers. And losers is someone who never tries anything. Losers is someone who never takes a risk, someone who's afraid to lose. Losers aren't the ones who lose.
And something I was actually saying today, like kind of on the flip side of that same point, is that before you make all these changes, like the point that I was making is that back, you know, years ago when I was 100 pounds overweight and drinking myself to death, pretty much nobody ever called me out on it. Everybody was fine with it. They're like, you know,
No,
when it came to my weight, they're like, you look fine, like you carry it well or whatever. And, you know, if it was the drinking, it was like, well, you know, you deserve a good time. And the reason that nobody will ever call you out is because if they call you out, they have to turn right back around and call themselves out. And nobody's trying to go through that. So they're
no, not
like,
at all.
yeah, you're fine.
There is two reasons also that I would add on to that. Is one, because people are too big of pussies to address an issue, and two, misery loves company. That is law.
Yep.
Misery loves company. And
Exactly.
as long as you're fat and drinking, it's okay for them to be fat and drinking, right? They're going to justify anything that they can to hold on to their weakness out of fear of change and out of fear of commitment. And it's sad because it's quite literally killing them. It's fucking killing them. It's killing them inside. It's killing them mentally. It's killing them emotionally. And it's hurting the people around them. And they're too fucking stupid to realize it, because comfort is not only a killer, but comfort makes you fucking dumb. It makes you really fucking stupid. Mm-hmm. It's so simple. It's such a simple, easy way to do things that, like, it's the same as like not trying to learn in school, not reading, not pushing yourself is the same thing as like mediocrity.
Yep. As the saying goes. Yeah, and it's funny. I was this is a while ago, but I was talking to somebody who actually knows Scotty here in Grand Rapids, and they were saying that, like, in reference to Scotty and just people in general, that, like, you know, people like to just, you know, quit drinking and then just start like getting into fitness, and they're just addicted to it. They just trade one addiction for the other. And they were saying, like, you know, that's what Scotty did. And I'm like, yeah, dog, like, that's the fucking point. Like, meanwhile, here you are, like, let's compare, please. I mean, there is no comparison. And, you know, I don't want to tear this person apart, but, you know,
addiction is our superpower.
It's not hard to see the fruit of someone's efforts one way or the other. And it's not hard to look at somebody like Scotty and think, you know, well, he's doing something right.
Yeah. Scotty's a millionaire. He's ripped. He's has a beautiful family, a wonderful marriage. Like, I'll trade any addiction for that. Sorry. Like, you know, I mean, it is what it is, you know?
And the person who said that has none of those things.
Correct. They never will. Or, you know, or until they're so fed up with their shit that they actually, you know, seek higher counsel.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. You know, addiction is our superpower. And that when people say, yeah, he just traded one addiction for the next, it will just, like, to your point, yeah, no fucking shit. Obviously, that's what we're going to do. We're addicts. But I will tell you one thing. I'll take an addict over anybody. I will take an addict in recovery over anybody ever, period, because that's exactly what we do. We transfer our commitment. The same addict that would walk shoeless through a snowstorm to get a fucking bag of dope is going to do whatever it takes to feed his family, to grow, to become a better person, because that's what we do. We get high off of certain things, and when we get attached to that high, we go through whatever it fucking takes to get there. Our resilience is second to none. Our level of commitment is second to none. And that's why so many addicts, when they find things like fitness, when they find things like business, they become fucking very successful at it. Big surprise. Addiction is the superpower.
Yep. Yeah. And I feel like that's where I hit my stride with fitness was, I mean, I was into it even when I was, you know, drinking more heavily and had, you know, issues with it on and off. But, yeah, I'm the same way with anything, like, even more like just obsessive, where once I get hooked on something, like, I'm in. And I even said to you at the beginning of this whole thing, like, once I push go, like, I can't stop it. So I want to make sure I got all my ducks in a row and I know what I'm doing here. And I think that, you know, looking back, the only reason why I didn't have success with my own fitness prior to when I actually did was just literally lack of knowledge. I was just doing things wrong over and over, trying to figure out the right way to do it. And once I actually like learned what you're supposed to do, I was like, oh, I get it. I can do that.
Yeah. 100%. Well, that's how most people are with anything, right? Is whether they're trying to figure out how to do it themselves or they're, it's like, again, you wouldn't go 6 months without a car trying to figure out how to fix it yourself. That'd be fucking stupid. So instead, you go to the resource, you find out exactly what other people are doing to get there, and then you do it. And if you want to be successful at something, because things are, I mean, not in the sense of personal development, but anything that is competitive, you have to do it better. And you have to be so fucking obsessed with that thing that you figure out how to do it better and more often. And that, because obviously the repetition is what's going to create the success and create just the skill set in general. So once again, it goes right back to addict mentality. We are obsessed. We are absolutely obsessed. And people that are like, oh, you got to have balance, or, oh, wow, that guy really gets addicted. He really latches on to things. Well, that person that doesn't know what it's like to have something great. It doesn't happen to those people, because the people who do great things are fucking obsessed. We have to have it. It's what fuels us. And unfortunately, for those people that don't have that, most of them will never taste this. They'll never know what it's like. And that's too bad for them. But guess what? And I like saying this. This is my new favorite thing to say. They don't belong here.
Mm-hmm.
I love the harshness of how that sounds, but it's all facts. If you can't put all your emotions aside, become completely engulfed, obsessed, addicted, whatever the fuck you want to say, to the point where you can see it, where it's like, okay, yeah, Scotty, man, he really took his addiction and turned it into fitness. Well, guess what? Scotty's accomplished something that you will never, ever see. But unfortunately, because you're not wired the same way as Scotty, you don't belong there. And you just shut the door on them.
Yep.
Because that's where they belong, outside in Mediocreville.
Yeah.
Toodaloo.
And the sad reality for them is that the door's always unlocked. Like, you can decide if you want to walk through it, but
absolutely.
If you can't flip that switch, then sorry.
They don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you come at me and judge my addiction, judge my obsession, like you're going to hurt my feelings.
Right. Yep.
Hold your thought while I pick out which Rolex I'm going to put on.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I was thinking.
Like, really?
My tears and $100 bills.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, whatever. Like, fuck you. You don't know what this feels like. The other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And my fuel is addiction.
And even like, I talk about a lot, even before you get to that point where you're getting the fruit of your labor. I mean, for me, like the second that when I messaged you and was like, okay, I'm in, what's next? Like that day was like the turning point of my life. And when you commit to the thing that you're supposed to be doing, the thing that is like calling to you, where your purpose lies, like as soon as you just say yes, like that's when everything changes. And like the money and all that stuff is a byproduct. And if people could just like get the fuck out of their own way to know what that feels like all you have to do is say yes. And then, the rest happens. I mean, you have to apply yourself obviously and do the work, but like it's unlocked in that moment. And people
we'll
never find out.
This is a skill set too. So we're like kind of breaking down your skill sets, right? So what do we say? You have balls, you have adaptability and you can evolve. obviously you're likable, you can make a decision. And being able to make a decision is, like, put it this way. I can tell you how successful somebody is by how fast they can make a decision, even in meaningless things like ordering at dinner, standing in line at Starbucks. Like, the person that takes forever to make a decision is not successful, and they probably won't be, because that's the way that they're wired. So, because look at it like this, okay? If someone takes a long time to do something, it's because they don't have a value on time. They always say, give your important tasks to somebody who's already busy, because they're used to like getting shit done quick, right? Don't give it to somebody who's not busy. That would be fucking dumb. So the people who don't have a value on time, it not only, let's just say in the sense of like ordering, like, not only do they not care about their own time, they don't care about the person behind them's time. So that's the value. That's the standard that they have set on themselves. And unfortunately, those are character defects of people that they just will never end up getting over. And or if they do, it takes a lot of unwiring and rewiring to get that character defect to be, correct. The only wrong decision is indecision. And a lot of people are stuck in indecision, and that's where they are. And again, it's because too, like, okay, so let's say it takes you forever to make a decision to actually go into something. Okay. But that wishy-washiness is going to carry into, okay, so now you're successful and you got to make a decision quick to like hire somebody. And you're like, oh, well, this is a tough decision for me. Or you got to make a quick decision to fire somebody. And it's like, oh, well, what about this? And you start weighing out all the other things. And meanwhile, time's going by and that person's sucking you dry. And the only wrong decision is indecision.
Yep. And I think a lot of times, your conscience and what's going on in your head is always talking, and more often than not, maybe all the time, you already know deep down what decision you're going to make. And it's like when you say decisions don't take time, they take information. It's almost as if you're waiting for one more piece of information to come to sway that answer that you kind of already know is the thing, when instead you just go, in
right.
layman's terms, going with your gut.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's either that, or otherwise you're looking for every reason to not commit to something, and more reasons of why it will fail. But also, what a lot of people do, and you may not know this, a lot of people catastrophize. They make things way bigger. Like they make the worst case scenario way more likely than it will ever be, and most likely that scenario will never ever happen in the first place. It just won't even happen. And they literally build up this thing in their imagination that's like, holy shit, like, what if this goes wrong and I lose my house and my dog gets rabies and this and that? And you're like, and then all of a sudden you get through it all and you're like, wow, that wasn't really so bad. But most people won't even get through it all. They won't even get to that problem because they're so afraid of the worst case scenario that never actually happens. Rarely. I've been in the spot. And I've actually put myself in those situations, back up against the wall, last of my cash that I have just to spend or before whatever, and been like, oh my God, I'm going to like lose it all. Everything's going to go to shit. And literally was there. And guess what? It didn't even happen. 1 week offset the entire like shit storm that had hit me before.
Yeah.
And even if it does, even if the worst case scenarios happen, the level of effort, the level of commitment that it takes to get to that worst case scenario, and even if it does, and everything fucking falls apart and goes to complete shit, and you land back at zero, you know what it takes to get back there. You have built the most important skill set off of that one lesson.
Yep. Yeah. And you just, when I'm weighing things out sometimes, what's the alternative? If there's something you need to do, if there's something you're supposed to do, then obviously, if you do the thing, you're going to get the outcome. And what's the alternative to not doing what you're supposed to do? Like a life unlived, feeling like shit forever. Look in the mirror. Like that's what you have to look forward to. Exactly what you're doing right now.
Or worse.
Yeah.
You ain't getting any younger, and your body's not responding any faster, and your mind is slowing down, and like,
yeah. And
but again,
I feel like,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like, especially in this health and fitness space, a question I've gotten, a lot of different ways is like, well, how do you get started? Like, how do you get yourself to, how did you change, or how did you get started? And I'm like, you just start. Like I know that you're trying, you're waiting for an answer that you haven't heard before. And I am telling you, there is not one. It is everything you already know. I don't even have to tell you what it is you already know. I can tell you, it won't make a difference.
Yeah.
And, like I'm thinking of somebody right now who is, you've asked me, you've asked other people I know you follow 20 other people who giving you the same message, and you're still asking me what to do. At that point, why are you even pretending that you want to?
Well, yeah, and that's the idea of like knocking at that door, right? Like it's not a matter if they're actually looking for an answer. They're not looking for the answer. They're looking for the invite. But even when they get the invite, they're still going to maybe knock on the next door just to make sure. And again, that's the problem with indecision. That's the problem with wishy-washy behavior. That's just the only. It's again, you cannot force somebody to change. They got to be so fed up with their own shit that they're ready to do it. And a lot of people will show those signs, right? They'll be going back and forth and like asking everybody around them and seeking approval and information. But like that, the approval and the information, none of that fucking really matters. Well, all that matters is literally being so fed up with your own shit that you have to do it, that you have to make the change. And unfortunately, it's not a set time for everybody. It's different. It's different times for people. It's different times for drug addicts. It's different times for alcoholics. It's different times for fat bastards. It's different times for everybody. And I wish that there was like this sick of my shit meter that we could like be like, okay, he's like right there, it's gonna ding, and then we're gonna be like, boom, grab him. But unfortunately, that meter is a complete circle. and it's just unlikely that you'll ever be able to really tell. And the sad thing is some of these problems are so much worse than you even think, bro. Like you may think a lot, like this happens a lot where I have guys that come to me and they're like, they're asking me about fitness advice, but they're hiding the fact that they're complete drug addicts or complete alcoholics. Right. Mm-hmm. And they're hiding the fact that they're internally wasting away. Their soul is shot. There's so much more than just the 50 pounds of weight that they have to lose. But the thing is, John, is the one skill set that you're going to have to not have to, but you will develop is being able to pull the rest out of them, because there are men out there that are going to come to you for fitness guidance. And at the end of the day, there's a whole laundry list of other issues or one huge fucking elephant in the room that is ready to kill them. And unfortunately, in my world, I've lost some.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I thought this cat just wanted to get a six pack and it turned out that he had a fentanyl addiction.
Person that I don't. Yeah. Yeah,
and they
that
die.
story
And
that
you
you
wake
were
up. What's that?
oh the story that you were talking about the other day of the guy who reached out and he ended up committing suicide several days later. And you know, I didn't know him personally, but you know, obviously we have mutual people. And um yeah, dude, it just like it's mind boggling to think how deep some of that shit can go. And just
Mm-hmm.
all the other things in the world don't seem to matter. And you know, I was trying to figure out who it was when I first heard about it. And you know, I'm seeing pictures of him with his daughter who's like a little older than mine. And I, you know, I'm just trying to think like what could possess me to get to that point without reaching out to somebody. And it's just so sad that people won't reveal that stuff.
Well,
You
I can
know,
tell you
sure.
for me, like I actually was like, so a lot of people are, the suicide thing is a cry for help. And for me, you know, I was very quiet about it. And that was like, and I didn't like broadcast like the fact that I was suicidal. I did weird shit when I was like going into like that. It was like a romanticizing and like a really like secret feeling,
Mm-hmm.
that it was like a matter of my brother literally finding me and saving me. But there were like instances that I can go back to where it was like, you know, I would act like everything was fine, or I would let my ego get in front of like me actually getting help. And then when it was really the day came that I was like committed to doing it, it was an act of God that my brother, you know, found me. That's one instance, bro. I've had like 10 of those instances.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah. And it is true that, you know, the cry for help versus the reality. And I've said that before. And even in my own experience with it, you know, it's something that, uh, you know, I've had my thoughts and feelings and experiences about, and I have never, you know, broadcasted it, certainly in public or really even in private. And it's one of those things that, um, at least for me personally, I would be terrified to, because I know the power of saying things out loud. And I'm afraid that even if I said it out loud, that I would manifest it to the point where it would be that much more likely to happen.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, I'm not struggling with that anymore. But when I was, you know,
Yeah.
it was it was something you obviously you ruminate on personally, but that's a whole nother level.
Mm-hmm. Or, you know, or just, you know, I've had one in particular that really struck me because it was not too recent, but it was, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 8 months ago, where a guy was like, invoice was in his email. He was set to go. And like an hour later, he overdosed on fentanyl. And I can just think of like, I was probably the last person that he talked to. And the text messages were like, you know, because I knew the guy, I was like, what are you being a bitch? You know what I mean? Like, I was like hard on him. And you know what I mean? It was hard to not take a little bit
Yeah.
of responsibility for that. And I, you know, I spoke with my sponsor in AA, and I was like, you know, um, you know, I was like, you know, I feel somewhat responsible. And he was like, dude, you're not that powerful. And I was like, man, I needed to hear that.
Yeah. And at that, I mean, to get to that level, there could never be one thing that's said that, you know, pushes the marker that far.
Yeah, it's unlikely though that there's usually something else that's underlying.
Right.
This was fun, man. I'm glad we were able to do this tonight. Thank you for
Yeah.
or tell your wife I said thank you for giving me the green light to do this. I got
Oh,
a
I will.
I got a Monte Cristo downstairs with my name on it, and I'm stoked to do these more often with you, bro.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully in person one of these days.
Well, yeah, you'll be out here in a few weeks.
I know. I can't wait.
That's
I'm
awesome.
actually, I'm scared. And you said it, and I was already thinking it that I'm going to go, and then I'm going to be like, I can't leave. Sorry.
With Huntington, you won't want to. Hold tight real quick. Guys, if you like this, make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment, share this, get this out there. We really appreciate you listening to the Wolves Only podcast. Follow John on Instagram at Iron Anchor Fitness, and show him some love and get all up in his stuff. And we'll catch you guys next time. All right, guys, that wraps up an episode of the Wolves Only podcast. Listen, if you guys like what you heard, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like and comment, help us get our message out there. If you want to work with our team, go ahead and click the link in the description below. Schedule a call with us. We'd love to get you on. We really appreciate you guys listening. And if you have any other questions, you can reach out to us on all forms of social media. Thank you so much.